Hi, Chelsea. Welcome back to the Kindness Code. I'm so looking forward to this episode because this is one of the things we talked about right from the start. So working with children, especially children in residential homes, there's some pretty full-on behaviours happening. And I actually said, well, what is this? What makes them do this? And you said something to me that totally landed. And you said, but Carmel, their behaviour is communication.
Yep, exactly right. Really is that. Their behaviour is communication. What that means is that what we see is telling us something more than what we see on the surface. And so our job is to offer some curiosity around that and really try to understand it. When we understand it, our jobs become easier. And what I mean by that is we're not trying to make our jobs easy. We're trying to make our relationships with the children more fluid, more organic. And when we start to understand them and we can connect with them, things feel a little bit easier, a little bit gentler. And children feel seen and validated and understood. Excuse me. And when they feel understood, we're gonna start to see more regulation, and we're gonna start to see them communicate in ways that are not necessarily always or only behavior that maybe could be quite risky or unhealthy, or what we might not want to choose for them, if you see what I mean.
I guess in taking it back to this idea of a baby would cry because they're hungry or they're cold and need their nappy changed or something, and we get that. And I guess if we just take it through, children and the young people, especially children that haven't had the best start in life or the easiest start in life, don't always have the right ways of saying how they're feeling and some of the emotions that they're feeling, do they?
No, they don't. And so that's what's happening, is they are communicating with us in the only way they know how in that moment. So it's not easy for most children to be able to say, do you know what? I'm just having a really tough day today. I've got a lot on my plate.
It's not that easy for most adults to be able to communicate like that.
Exactly. And so, it looks different. It can be very easy when we're working with children, particularly teenagers, to just label it or blame it on being a teenager. And actually, being a teenager is just kind of adding to the feelings, so they've already got these really big, strong emotions. They're going through lots of changes in the brain, in the body. Hormones are sort of going crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the brain. And then you chuck in, some really, really difficult experiences through childhood. When we become teenagers, we start to become a lot more curious about ourselves. Children are starting to think about, who am I? They're looking for their own identity. They become a little bit more adventurous. They might start experimenting with various things. And so they're really trying to figure it out. So it can be a time where things start to come to the surface that have maybe been difficult when they were younger, or even for them right now. And so that might start to look really different. It also can feel, as an adult, a little bit trickier to manage because they're not little. You're not working with a toddler.
I suppose if the child's small enough to scoop up and cuddle, you can kind of regulate them, and then you understand that we understand more that younger children can't control.
But metaphorically, that is what is going on and what they need. They need to be scooped up and cuddled. But
how do we do the cuddle? How do we see the behaviour, and how do we make that cuddle happen?
Well, sometimes it is just giving them a cuddle, if you have that relationship, if it's appropriate, and, and they want that. But other things are just what feels like a big hug. So I always say, so how we wake up children in the morning, we're in a residential setting. We've got children in bedrooms and we're staff. So that's the black and white of it. It doesn't sound so lovely and therapeutic. And so we've got to wake them up in the morning, and it can be really easy to just knock on the door. It's 8 o'clock, time to get up. Or we can, I'm just gonna let myself in. Are you decent? Is it okay for me to come in? Poke my head in. I've got a cup of tea here for you. I've just put it next to your bed. I'm just going to open the curtains for you a little bit, let a bit of light in and help you wake up, and I'll go and get your breakfast on the go. That is like a hug, isn't it? anyway, if somebody come and did that for me in the morning, that would feel like a big hug for me.
Yeah, I would say anyone's offered to do that. No, joking. But yeah, it sounds easy, but actually it's busy. Whether you're a parent or whether you're working in a children's home, it's the same thing. Come time to get up and it feels natural, a nice knock on the door. But what you said, it's like, is how do we do that kind of showing parental type love, but we can't just, the kids in bed, we can't just give them the big hug and a kiss. So we have to do it in other ways, don't we?
Yeah, for sure. So that stuff, is important all the time. We talk lots about connection, and these are ways that we connect. So to understand behavior and what it's telling us is really not kind of, like I was saying, it feels a bit trickier when they're teenagers because it can be a bit scarier. It can be much bigger, and it can be trickier to have to sort of tackle head on. But often what we are seeing, is kind of a step back into younger years, where we are in our brain in that moment. We're a little bit, it might look like behaviours of a 5-year-old, but we're, working with behaviours of a 5-year-old in the body of a 15-year-old. He might look 19. And so that to connect with can be really, really tricky, because which part do you connect with? But the part that you connect with is the emotional age. It's where they are. It's where they're operating from in that moment.
So give me some examples, because I know that it feels when the behaviours are exhibiting, and this is throughout all the different times. Give me an example of how we really understand that behaviour.
So the main thing we need to do is be curious. We need to not assume, oh, they're just being like that because, or they're in a bad mood today because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. That's not a real thing. We obviously do wake up in different moods, what have you. But, if Carmel, you didn't seem yourself today, I would want to know why. I wouldn't just go, well, Carmel's in a bad mood today. I would say, okay, you don't seem yourself, So sometimes it's just that really, really gentle inquiry. When it looks bigger, we need to think about there's something else going on here, and we need to focus on trying to figure out what that might be. So instead of trying to fix, trying to put a stop to behaviours that might feel big, that might feel risky, that might feel unsafe in the moment. Of course, we need to, safety has to remain a priority, but what is it trying to tell us? And so how we might understand that is staying close and really observant. When we've got a regulated child, we can then start to ask some questions. You're not seeming yourself right now. That seemed really hard for you. Something really big was going on for you in that moment. I wonder if you know what that is. And then we can start to figure it out. Sometimes it might be, we might know, and we're not asking ourselves the questions. So when you say the last couple of days, a young person has been, dysregulated, there might have been some behaviours that, I don't know, they missed curfew, or there was some things thrown around in a bedroom, there's been more shouting and swearing, what have you. And then you recognise, they're seeing their mum and dad at the weekend. You then might start to think, this could be around that. Mm-hmm. I think they might be feeling a little bit anxious. They might be feeling a little bit worried about that. It might even be excitement, and they don't know where to put those big feelings. And so when we don't know the whole picture, we're not really, really understanding the child. We're just seeing face value, and that's not helpful.
So I guess it's that idea, either we have to be really curious because we don't know, and if we do have an idea, it's that idea rather than if you said to a child, is this happening because you're worried about seeing your parents? They don't go, yeah, that's totally it, are they? They're not self-aware.
No.
Any teenagers, but especially teenagers that are in children's homes, they haven't had the best start. They probably haven't got the language potentially. And so asking those questions, how do we go about it? Is it just that regulation and keeping curious?
Yeah, for sure. It is just asking questions, but not in an intense way, but noticing, validating how they're feeling, noticing. I'm noticing you're not yourself today. I'm noticing you've been a little bit down the last couple of days. Or it might be that we've noticed a really big energy, and it's really playful, and it's really loud, and it's really quite hyperactive, and that might be, so any change that we notice, we lean into. We don't always have to be verbally curious either. We just notice, and we hold it in mind. We might talk to the team around us to say, I've noticed this young person is presenting however, and I think we just need to be a little bit mindful of that. if it comes up in conversation, you might want to broach it. How are you feeling about X, Y, Z? So it's not necessarily always saying, hey, I can see that this is going on. Tell me what, it's not, they're not going to be able to do that all of the time.
Well, interesting, because I guess when thinking about, you think behaviour, like the obvious stuff, swearing or angry or really withdrawn. But actually what you're saying is noticing the little stuff and being really ready before the little stuff gets big and starting to put those little bits of the jigsaw puzzle together to understand, isn't it? But knowing that there's something going on.
Yeah.
And they're trying to tell us, because using the words is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. If all of a sudden coming home from school looks different, then more withdrawn, wanting to go straight to their bedrooms, not wanting to talk, and that's not their normal, we need to listen to that.
Yeah, and if there was some kind of bullying going on, even as adults, we might sometimes find it difficult to confide in someone, to say we feel hurt, we feel vulnerable. And so children are the same, young people, teenagers are the same, aren't they? Just to say, wow, I'm being bullied, or something not nice is happening to me. They're not just going to come and go, hey, this is happening, can you help me, are they? Yeah. We have to, I love the idea that we observe very gently the communicate, the behaviour, to see the communication, rather than thinking about, because I kind of had my heels, it was the big behaviours that are communicating, but there's little behaviours as well.
Ones too, yeah. And I think when we're talking about looked after children, they come with so many notes, everything about them is written down. And before they arrive to a new care setting, whether that's a foster placement or a children's home, whatever, you'll get a set of notes, and everything in those notes are what their presentation looks like, what their behaviours are. They're living in this children's home, and these are the areas that we would like you to work on with them, which is their risk-taking. They have controlling behaviours. They, struggle with boundaries, for example. They're kind of some common areas. And so it can feel like our job is we've got to fix those things. And sure, we want them to improve. We don't want them to be taking risks that are harmful. And, all of those things we need to think about, control and what that might look like in future relationships and things like that. But we also need to understand it. So controlling behaviours is one I like to talk about, because it's something that you actually do hear quite a lot. Controlling behaviours, a need to control. And I just don't think it's a bad thing. I really don't. And it can feel, they're being very controlling. They want to dictate, sort of which staff members are with them when and who's taking them to what appointment. And I think, who cares? Good. Because when I was a child, I wanted my mum to take me to all those appointments. I wanted my safe person to take me to those appointments. And I always knew who was going to be picking me up from school and taking me to school and those types of things. So we're working with young people that have had so much disruption in their life. They might have been in 10 different placements by the time they reach you, wherever it is you're working, if you're in a residential setting, or a foster placement. They might have been in 10 other homes by the age of 13. It's huge. And so they are taken from their school, their friendship group, their family members, their home, their familiar area. They might live in a different county now. And that might have happened many, many times. And so how can there not be a need to, a want, an urge to try and control as much as you possibly can when so much has felt so out of control? And as adults, well, I like to be in control. I like to know what my week looks like and who's coming over for dinner and what day the shopping's coming, and whatever it is, we like to know what's coming and who's going to be around and those types of things. We like to be in control of our life. It's what creates safety. And so controlling behaviours this is a child that has a need for autonomy. They need their voice, they need to have choice, they need to have a say, and it's really important.
And actually that's kind of great, isn't it? Because I've heard that as well, like all the kids are trying to control what's going on. And they've just had all this sliding doors of adults their whole life. And as a child in my childhood, your mum was there, or she got the bus home, and that's what we did. And we had that regulation, we had that regular regularity going on. So when we see that behaviour, we know that we've got to listen. I love this idea that we it's so easy as adults to react because we're kind of taught to sort of control kids. But actually when children are trying to tell us, hey, can I please have that person, that adult being my safe person, picking up from school, taking me to the doctors, taking me bowling, whatever it is.
Yeah. And there's a difference between, as adults, being in control and controlling. And you know, that's important because as adults, we should be in control so control is what creates safety, right? So by you having control of your own life and knowing what comes next, that offers you some predictability, that offers you stability, that offers a feeling of safety for you. If you didn't know where you were sleeping from one night to the next, and if you were going to be moved from your home into another in the next month or two, and, you know, your friendship group all of a sudden isn't there anymore, whatever it might be, that's not going to make you feel steady. And so young people do have a need to control. They need autonomy, and they need to feel like they can almost manipulate the environment to create predictability, routine, and safety. In those moments, we're not, when I talked about inquiring earlier on and being curious, we're not saying to a young person, I've noticed you're really controlling. What might that be about? You know, we're not doing that. But we are noticing it, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's this telling us, and what do we understand about it? We know what their history looks like, and this makes sense to us now. So our job as the adults is to be in control. We're going to create the safety, we're going to create the routines, we're going to create the predictability. And then over time, that young person will feel less and less need to control because they will feel safe in the adults, and they will know that I don't need to control now because I feel safe in the adults around me. They're in control. And that's really, really a great example of understanding a behaviour.
Because working with children, I mean, we're kind of focused a little bit on children in residential care, but if you're teaching in a school and there's children coming in with loads of things going on in their life, or your foster parent or a youth worker, people do it because they really care. And I've met so many beautiful, kind people doing this. But actually, they're not trained counsellors. And what I hear from you is that actually we have to be quite clever the way we communicate, and we be curious with these children, because it's about observing behaviours and then really that gentle inquiry, really finding out what it is, but not in an obvious way. And it kind of, when you're saying it, it sounds really easy, Chelsea. I know in the moment when you've got lots going on, it's not easy to do. So we're observing the behaviours, and can you give us some more ideas and more on how we start doing that gentle inquiry? How the kind of questions, how we construct questions so it's not confrontational, but it might gently draw things out or help the child see, understand themselves a little bit better.
Yeah. I think it starts with the adults and the team of adults that are around the child. So we don't need to always directly be going straight to a young person to say, hey, what's going on? There are lots of ways we can do that. If it's been a hard day, it can feel maybe quite easy to sort of offload on the team and say, oh God, it's been really hard. I felt my buttons have been pressed all day, or whatever. What we need to do, what I encourage everybody to do at the end of those days, or in those moments when you're finding yourself talking about what the day has been like or what the presentation of a child has been, so then say, I wonder what that's about. What do we think that is about? Don't write it off as a bad day. Do you see, don't just kind of go, oh, they've just not had a good day, let's hope for a better day tomorrow. Sure, we're going to hope for a better day tomorrow, but I wonder what that is about. I wonder, sometimes young people go missing when they're in care. That's something we hear about a lot. And we can fall into this sort of like, we do everything we can to prevent them from going missing again. And that might look like adjusted curfews. It might look like you can't go out, for the rest of the week because we need to work on. But actually, what is the young person telling us when they're going missing? So of course, we have to do all the safeguarding stuff around a child being missing. It's the worst thing when a child goes missing. It's awful. But then we can kind of fall into a bit of like helicopter parenting where we then need to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we do want to do that, but we're not going to do that by creating a home that's we're making it stricter and we're kind of looking down on where you're going and who you are. What we need to do is think about, why did they feel like they needed to go missing? What was going on for them? Where did they go? Who were they with? Are you telling me that you just need a little bit more time with your friends? Are you telling me that you're just feeling really closed in and you needed some time to yourself? It doesn't mean that we then just give it and go, yeah, cool, go out with who you like, do it. That's not the point. But we do have to, and again, it kind of circles back around to the control element that I was talking about. Let's give some autonomy in this moment. So I was really worried about you when you went missing. And what we understand about that is perhaps there's a lack of understanding around risk, because that was a really risky thing that you did. You put yourself at danger. We might understand through a conversation that that young person was just feeling a bit cabin fevery. They just wanted to get out. They wanted to. I'm sick of being in a children's home. I just wanted to feel, air quote, normal. We hear that. We say, yeah, I get it. I really understand that, but we have to do it safely. So, what do you think might help you feel like you have a little bit more space, freedom, whatever? And then we can work together to find ways that feel, good but safe. And then that young person is feeling understood, listened to, heard. And as time goes on, it will change and things will get easier. So, because some children in, say, a foster placement, it might not be the same. We might have young people that don't, in residential settings, we might have young people that don't get to go out as much as they would like with their friends. They might want later curfews. They might, there's risk elements to everything. And so it looks different for different young people. If they're at school, though, and all their friends are doing, you remember what it was like. You just want to fit in and do what everyone else is doing. So it is really about asking those questions of your team. It was awful and it was horrible that happened. And this is the safeguarding stuff that we have to do to make that child safe. But now I really want to try and understand what was going on for them so that I can try and prevent it from happening from a place of connection and trust. Rather than them feeling like they have to sort of fight against it. We can work on this together.
Because it feels counterintuitive. And I think, as parents of teenagers, or as people looking after teenagers, wow, they've really broken the trust and they've stayed out late. But actually it is a communication. It's saying, hi, I need a bit more, but they also want to be kept safe, don't they?
Yeah.
But I love that idea that we just step back and communicate and really see what they're saying.
Yeah. And I find it really interesting when sometimes I can feel people not taken aback, that's maybe too strong a word, but sometimes I might sort of visit homes and I say, oh, how's it going? How's it been? And somebody might say, oh God, it was a really late night last night. I'm very tired. And then they might tell me about an incident that happened. And then I say, it sounds really, really tough. What do you think was going on for the young person at the time? And sometimes it can feel quite confronting because you can kind of tell that, well, maybe I haven't actually given that much thought. I was thinking more about how hard it was for myself. That's okay. We're allowed to say it was hard for me. But in those moments, it can be difficult to then separate the two and say, okay, that was a hard day for me. I need to have a rest, have a breather. But now I want to think about what was going on for them. What were they telling me?
It was tough for them too.
It was tough for them too. And what are they trying to tell me?
I had going into one of the homes. I don't go in that often. And I went into one of the homes. One of the children was kind of spoke to me in a way that was kind of rude. I won't go into the actual things. And I was, hey, that's really fine. And I didn't say anything. And I just kind of thought, I'll let someone else deal with it. And actually someone said, that was terrible. You should apologise. I was like, no, that's not what we do. And one of the other youth mentors took the child for a walk, the young person for a walk, and really listened to them. And it turned out what she'd said to me was because she'd got the wrong end of the stick. She'd got a wrong story. So what she thought had happened. And when we saw the behaviour and we heard it and we connected with the child, we found out how she was feeling. We found out that we could say, hey, this isn't what it was. And so it was a really interesting thing. So the behaviour, she was telling us something. And when we stopped and listened.
Yeah, we always try and fix the behaviour.
Yeah, and say, and initially what someone else said, that's terrible, you've got to apologise. It's like, no, it's really fine because I've walked into her home and she's feeling something really big. And it turned out she was feeling it from what she thought it was. And that was just, for me, that really landed on that, the behaviour. They're trying to tell us something, aren't they? Yeah. And she was feeling quite angry about something. But actually, it was fine. And then by seeing that it was a behaviour that was telling something. So I've learned so much, Chelsea, from you. I'm loving this journey. And just, again, you make it sound easy. And I know that it's not always easy. So from listening to this, and there's so many different scenarios. There's so many different ways behaviour as communication comes out. But what would you like, your top tip from someone listening to this, what would be the takeaway?
Observe and ask the question. For me, that's the most important thing. And talk about it with your team. So, I want people to say, like I did to that member of staff in the home, what do we think this is about? You don't have to do it all the time in the moment, constantly. We're going to just let the day happen. But we do need to say, I'm noticing this. What do I think it's about? So that we can understand it. When we understand it, we can connect. When we can connect, we can regulate. It's a lovely little cycle that we can get into. So really, really be curious and observe and lean in. I just want to say as well, it's very easy for us to talk about, the behaviours that are sort of going missing, or, there might be some violence, or, things in the home getting broken, those types of things, but also listen to the young person that is withdrawn, that is quiet, that likes to just spend time in their bedroom. That stuff's telling us to everything that we see is a communication. Even if they're just having their best day, the communication is, I feel great.
I'm happy and we're great. Let's what's making them happy.
Yeah, if we're all dancing around, singing in the kitchen, having a kitchen party, we all feel good because we feel that energy, and it's contagious, and we know, that young person's had an amazing day today because they told us. They didn't say, I've had the best day ever, but we saw it. So it's really easy to spot when it's beautiful and it's happy and it's joyful. It's not always as easy when it doesn't look like that, and it feels hard for us as well. So I will always say it, we have to give ourselves some grace as well, but inquire, ask the questions, lean in and notice.
And observe. I love it. And be kind, be open-hearted. Thanks again, Chelsea. I love these conversations. And until next time, the next episode.
Thanks so much.